All right, here we go. Well, my friends, this is a very strange episode. Amanda's not here. She was here, and she's watching. Maybe we should open YouTube and another channel here, another window. We've been having all kinds of problems with this whole thing, interface recording with latency and lag and all of that stuff. So it got so bad she had to just leave. So it's just me and Sean. Sean, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing all right. Disappointed Amanda can't make it, but the last few times we tried to record, there was issues with the service that we're using, and they seem to be direct only affecting Amanda. But I mean, she did speed tests, and she's getting lightning fast speed tests everywhere except for this service that we're using. So I
Yeah.
guess we'll have to look around at competitors and get a trial and test them out for the next one.
Yeah, we did reach out to the people that make this software. I did, and no response. So I don't know.
Yeah,
We're at a
when
loss.
you're paying an annual fee, you'd expect to get a little bit of service. But I'm not going to name and shame. Not ready to do that yet. But just to say, we're disappointed with who we're using.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so in case you don't know, this is Lunch Bites. This is the YouTube live version of our podcast, the Website 101 podcast, where we talk about building and managing websites. Sean, anything going on in your world these days with from the web perspective? What's going on?
Well, I got stuff going on there, but like you and Amanda, the more important thing is that I'm digging out from this winter blast that we had. The snow at the end of my driveway is taller than my car.
Yeah.
So it's just insane.
Yeah, I took my kid to school today and got stuck in I didn't get stuck, but there was like a traffic jam on one of the side streets because all of the snow is piled up. It's basically one lane, but you have
Yes.
to like pull over and wait for the other guy to go by you. Anyway, it didn't work, and there was a school bus there. And of course, there was that idiot who blasts his horn. He was right behind me. I saw him doing it. He kept going like this and then laying on his horn as if someone fell asleep in their car. What does he think? Why is that going to help? It's
Lean your
so
head out the window and look at the line of cars in front of you. Road rage doesn't do anything.
it just makes me feel rage as another person. There was even a pedestrian that walked by when he was on the horn, and the
Shaking his head.
pedestrian looked by, and yeah, he was like, "What are you doing? Okay, don't you see all this snow?" Anyway,
Maybe he didn't get his coffee before he got in hand. He's got that morning coffee addict. I don't know, but he's definitely got some issues on. So maybe back to web development. What am I doing? Well, I'm a little bit slow right now for today, and I decided that I would upgrade my boilerplate to work with Tailwind 4.
oh, all right,
And I ran the auto one and nothing worked. It appeared to work, but it broke things, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to. What I decided to do was rebuild my build process from the ground up. I'm still going to stay with Laravel Mix just because I'm familiar with it. I know Vite is the new hot thing, but to use Vite with Craft, or the way at least the way I build it, I need to use a Craft plugin, and I don't want to have an extra dependency. I'm
yeah,
sure it's a great plugin, just doesn't not something I want to do. So I got
I agree.
I got the build process mostly working. I got the JavaScript compiling and the files that I want to copy in and out of various locations. Everything seems to be working. Hot module reloading seems to be working. And I was like, all right, now it's time to do the Tailwind stuff. And I'm stuck. I'm having some problems. So I need to do something with a post CSS plugin, but the Laravel Mix post CSS plugin hasn't been updated in like 2 years, and I'm trying to figure out if there's a workaround. I'm gonna put another hour into it. If I can't find it, uh, I'm gonna put some time with AI as well. But if I can't figure it out, I just might throw in the towel and go to Vite. But I still want to stick with what I got.
That's interesting. So it's that complicated going from Tailwind 3, whatever, to 4? There's that
It
many
might be
changes.
just based on my setup.
Well, I've got your setup too. It's the same, right? So
Okay.
that's why I'm curious. I don't want to use
Uh,
Vite particularly, and
yeah,
I don't need
I'm
to.
not too keen on it. I mean, I'm happy with the speed of mix, and seems to be the big selling point of Vite is that it's faster. I was like, I'm not really noticing it. The
Yeah.
only time I have an issue with the speed on my mix build is when I first started up. It takes like 20 seconds to start or something. But
Yeah.
after that, everything is like lightning fast.
Hmm.
Now, I did take this opportunity to remove some stuff that I was no longer using to like streamline it, and I'm really happy with that. But I just can't get Tailwind to work. And honestly, it was only the last 10 minutes before we had to start this recording, so I haven't put in
You may get it yet.
I haven't put my full time into it yet. I got to this roadblock and I was like, oh well, that's kind of convenient. I'll refresh with the lunch bites and then go have lunch, and depending on any emails, get back to it today or tomorrow.
You'll have a brainstorm when you get back and figure it all out, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's like with anything. If you step away from it, it just runs in the back of your mind, and when you come back to it fresh, a lot of times it solves your problem. It's like rubber ducking. Like
Yeah.
the other day, I was preparing to write a support request to Craft about something, and I spent 20 minutes like writing out the support request, and at the last second, just before I hit send, it's like, oh, I'm an idiot, and I changed one line, and it fixed everything.
Yeah. In the chat here, Amanda says sometimes stepping away, and then she didn't even finish. She said, "You took my line." She was about to say what you just said. That step away from the task. Sometimes your brain just figures out in the background. And she also says, updates that depend on old modules is very frustrating.
Yeah,
We've
I,
talked about this many times, both on this and on the podcast, that like modern web is so tied, like it's like a Jenga
it's
tower,
it's
you know?
fragile.
Yeah, there's so many components, and I don't even understand half of them, like the NPM modules that get installed when you install some CMS or whatever. Like,
Well, let's. I want to comment on that, but beforehand, I want to just jump back to the step away thing. This is something I used to be a teacher like 15 years ago. This is something that I would tell my students as well, and I also told my kids is like, you get stuck on something, you step away, you come back, and it goes with editing. If you're doing any sort of essay writing for school, or you're writing a support request, or you're writing for your blog, write it, do a first draft or second draft. Not everybody follows that, but I guarantee if you do, the fresh perspective will make things better. Okay,
yeah,
so oh shit, I stepped back. I went back too far, and now I forgot what I wanted to say.
that's another thing that could happen. Well, I said we were talking about it on this podcast, and on the podcast and on this, we've mentioned it many times. That it's like a Jenga tower. I'm trying to refresh your memory as we're
Yeah,
going
I know,
through
but it
this.
was it was after that.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Anyways,
anyways,
whatever.
maybe
We'll
it'll
come
come
back
back
to
to
it.
me.
Yeah. Now, let me get back to the Tailwind for a second. I noticed that the Syntax FM podcast has an episode about Tailwind 4.
I
Did
listened
you
to it
happen to
this
listen to
morning.
it? Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Is there any new, really awesome features that are included in
Yeah,
Tailwind now that
there's a
weren't?
bunch of stuff. It's got onboard support for container queries.
Okay.
That's the only one I can remember offhand. And you don't need to use bracket syntax for stuff that's not in Tailwind anymore, if I remember correctly.
Oh, interesting.
Uh, there's a few other things I can't recall right in the moment. But hey, oh, and there's a bunch of new CSS stuff that has been added that wasn't added to Tailwind 3.
Hmm.
So there's more modern CSS supported. But
Okay.
I can't speak to specifics.
Yeah, that's fine. So, well, Amanda, playing the role of the of a listener and a viewer, is asking a really great question. Can someone explain container queries? Sean, are you able to explain container queries aside from
At,
Tailwind?
at a very superficial level.
Yeah, I think let's hear you. I'll see if I can contribute a
Okay,
little
because
bit to
I
it.
have not used them. So it's just based on my memory from reading a blog post or listening to a podcast. a container query works like a media query for the container. So you can have a layout inside depending on the width of the container. So as
Yeah.
your browser resizes, the container may resize. And once the container gets below a certain point, then you could do different CSS with it, not
Right.
depending specifically on the width of the browser, but
Yes.
it's the width of the container. So if you set your container to be uh, 70 viewport widths, and you decide that if the 70 viewport widths is less than 500 pixels, I want to stack it instead of having 2 by 2,
Yeah.
then that's how it would work. That's my understanding. Haven't played with it. That's my caveat. I haven't actually tried it.
Yeah, I don't think I've tried it really extensively either. But I had an issue with this very thing just yesterday that I think could use container queries where I had a sidebar. In fact, it was actually for my portfolio, my own site. And you go to the work page and it shows samples of sites that I've done. But I'm going to have a sidebar that promotes the podcast. Hey, I also co-host this podcast, da da da, right? And
Yeah,
it
I
will
got a whole
have
podcast to
buttons.
say them on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to have buttons to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, right? But in the sidebar, so those two buttons might be side by side when the thing is very wide on a big computer screen. But when you shrink the screen down, the container that the buttons are in, that little sidebar, might change size such that I want something different to happen inside it, irregardless of what the window size is. All I care about is what size is that container where
It
the
sounds
buttons
to
are.
me like that is a good candidate for container queries.
I think so. Yeah. And so, because then, like you said, the buttons might stack at a certain point because they're
Right.
too narrow.
And
Yeah.
while you're using Tailwind 3 still, there's no reason you can't use a container query and just write some regular CSS.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting. I have to toy around with that and see. Because you don't want to, I always hate when I fall behind in stuff. Like I only learn months or years later, oh, you can do this in whatever, you know what I mean? Whether it's CSS itself or Tailwind. So I want to try
Yeah.
to keep on top of all these features. That's why I was asking. That's why I was asking if you heard that podcast that
Yeah,
Scott and Wes did.
I need to do more about keeping up with the various changes in JavaScript and CSS. The last several months, I put a lot of time into photography and not as much time into web development. I need to like flip the script on that.
Yeah,
Flip the script.
yeah, that's right. Have you heard of these tools now that let you create entire apps with AI? The two big ones are called Replit and Bolt.new.
I believe that I love the bubbles. I believe that you had posted something about it in our Slack, but
Yeah.
I didn't really pay too much attention to it.
So let me give a quick rundown here. I tried Replit because I heard about it on a podcast. Signed up. It gives you this interface that's sort of a lot like Cursor or VS Code or whatever, something like that. And it says, what do you want to build? And you type in a prompt. And in my case, I was like, okay, I have all these, I'm trying to manage the costs of electricity and heating and stuff in my house.
Right.
Because you get these invoices or whatever from your electric company, and it might have a date and a price, but I want to see it on a bar graph, right? See how it's evolving over time. So I said, okay, what the hell? I'll try this. So I said, just what I described to you. I just said, I'm going to make an app where it's like, I can point to a CSV file that has these columns, and I want you to plot it on a graph. Use whatever graphing thing you think is appropriate, blah, blah, blah. And it spit out in about, I don't know, 2 minutes of me prompting back and forth a little, a really, really nice looking interface where you can drag and drop a CSV file. It'll plot them. You can mouse over the thing. You see the cost. It was using like chart.js or something like that. Even in some of when I wasn't being specific about what technology to use, it made a React app at one point. Everything was React. And I was like, okay, well, this is cool, but I don't know what the hell. I don't know
I don't
React
like
very
React.
well.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I went back and I said, just make it HTML and a JavaScript library and, Tailwind or something. And it did it. And it was super awesome. And it was really nice. Now,
Nice.
what happened was I ran out of the tokens. Like eventually it said, okay, you want to publish this? You want to download it? What? Well, you got to sign up for and I didn't. I was like, okay, well, this is great. I tested it and it's pretty amazing, but I didn't want to subscribe. But I can see why
What was the
people who
cost on
build
that
apps, I mean, obviously they have all these tiers and it's very confusing because they charge you
by
by
designer?
the
Yeah.
tokens. Well, it's like you get 10,000 tokens and I don't know what the hell that gets me. Like all I want to know is, can I use it,
Right.
like unlimited or not, or what are, and I don't quite understand all those limitations. And the other one is bolt.new, and it's very similar. I mean, we don't build apps, we build websites, and apparently it's good for that too. But I think it's more geared at people who build,
Apps.
phone apps and whatever.
I wonder if you could sign up for this and build an app that's big enough or good enough that it would pass muster to get into the Apple and Play stores.
And I don't even know, like they have a
And what
publish
would you do
button.
if they tell you to make revisions and you don't understand the code at
Yeah,
all?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's like people say, you kind of have to be a developer to really make use of AI
Right.
because you have to know what it's not doing right. Um, yeah, and it's like they have this publish feature where you can publish it on their network or something. So I don't even know if you can just download all the files and put them on your own server or how that goes. I'm not really sure,
Interesting.
but it's pretty impressive.
Do you mind if I switch topics for a sec?
I don't. I just want to say that Amanda is saying every time I hear app, I think mobile app. What is an app versus a website? What's the difference between an app and a website? That's a good
I think
question.
I think a lot of apps are just like skinned websites that you can add to your home screen on your phone.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, sure. But I mean, in terms of when would you call something an app rather than a website? I would say an app tends to be more interactive where the user does stuff,
I,
more than a
I
website.
I would also say that maybe an app can work when you're offline, but a website cannot.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair,
I mean,
especially if it's on a
depending
device.
on the type of app. Like there, I mean, a photography, for example, there's a photography app I use. Like if I'm offline, it's still not going to load up the pictures that I'm expecting to see.
Yeah.
So, on Friday, I had a big issue with my computer, and Docker and DDev just decided not to work for me. And it took me a lot of back and forth and uninstalling and whatever to finally get things working. And I noticed today, while everything is working, something in this mess has affected my Visual Studio Code. I used
Oh.
to on the left sidebar. I used to be able to right click on a file or a folder and open in Explorer. I'm on Windows, so it would open in Explorer. That option no longer exists, and there's some other things that are missing. So at this point, and it's annoying because I use this all the time. I think I need to uninstall and reinstall everything, and then like do my plugins, and I was like, it's like so frustrating.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, you can like open the file and see it in your file folders, like your structure,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
like so. Let's say I'm grabbing a database from a live site. I will grab the database and paste it into the project folder so that I can import it using the import db command from ddev. Well, now I have to open up Explorer, navigate through all my drives and folders to get there instead of right clicking and opening directly on the folder I want to drop it in.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So it's
Um,
kind of annoying.
well, Amanda's asking, is this just Windows or WSL? What's WSL again?
Oh, yeah, I don't use WSL for reasons I'm not going to get into. So yeah, I'm using the Hyper-V Docker, not the WSL. WSL is recommended, but I have reasons I'm not using it.
Fair enough. Windows System Linux, she says. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow. You
Windows
guys.
subsystem for Linux.
Okay. Well, that's disappointing. Sorry to hear that you're going through that stuff. Is that the only issue with VS Code that you
Well,
found?
it's the only one that I noticed. It
Yeah.
isn't,
All right.
I mean, it could be the only one, but I think there's a couple other things that are different than I remember. So
Yeah.
I maybe once I get this Tailwind upgrade completed, I'll uninstall and reinstall VS Code and start fresh.
Yeah. And speaking of Tailwind, I was actually wondering if abandoning Laravel Mix and just using the post CSS thing that Tailwind recommends. Have you considered that? I was wondering because
Yeah,
I know it does a lot of stuff with concatenating files and that, but I don't know if I
there,
need that.
it's something I might do, but I like the mix that does the hot module reloading, but I can do that with just the npm file.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Because on a side note, little tangent here, I have a couple of projects that are running with Bootstrap and an older uh, Laravel mix build process, and they just got really difficult to work with. And I said, and we built a new section. And it's like I just want to do this with Tailwind, so I did the uh, package JSON will script to run the CLI
Mm.
for Tailwind. So I've done that. And actually, now that you mention that, maybe I'll just drop Mix entirely, start fresh.
Yeah, I'm tempted
It
because
the problem with that is if I want to upgrade my existing projects to
yeah.
Tailwind 4, I still have to rebuild everything uniquely for each project. I'm not going to have an easy
Yeah.
migration path.
Right, right.
But it might just be the
Again.
price I decide to pay for that.
Yeah.
Or keep these projects on Tailwind 3.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with Tailwind 3. I just might need to hand write some CSS that's not available in
Right.
that version.
Yeah, I did find that I used I was managing an old project the other day, and I think I was using the typography. What is it? What's that thing?
Typography plugin? Yeah, I use that all the time.
Pros. Yeah, the pros with the pros thing or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't have that installed on this old project, and I'm writing pros this and that, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And oh yeah, it's an old version that doesn't have that. So sometimes I do try to upgrade old projects, but it's pretty rare. Usually it's like, it's done. But when I'm still managing those projects, you could really benefit from the newer features. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
So I feel like maybe this is a good time to end. What do you think, Mike?
yeah, we can wrap it up there. Amanda's not here to really spice up the conversation, but I'm
Yeah,
glad
Amanda.
you're watching,
Hopefully,
Amanda.
we get something working with you. I see in Slack she posted a Reddit thread with a solution or a
Oh, good.
recommendation for another service.
We will try that. And everybody subscribe to the podcast. There was an episode out this week, just
This
today,
morning.
right?
This morning,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
Yeah.
right. About ethics, ethical dilemmas in web development. Really interesting. We had some listener feedback as well that we're going to talk about it. So subscribe if you're not subscribed. And yeah, that'd be great, right?
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye. Bye, Amanda. I
So
think we're